write this? Is your family?
No, it came with the cards.
Yeah. She trusts us with it.
Yeah, we'll look at it.
She wants the ink to match.
It's not one of her.
They're like, really? What?
Okay, we will get started with the budget workshop. Seems so early, but
A week early.
there's a lot of information there, so. Dana, Roger, you want to?
Sure, I think I'm going to start. It is early, and so because it's early, we want to characterize this as really an initial budget draft, not really sort of the first draft, because there's a lot that we just don't know. So what we're going to do today is we're going to walk through the budget as it exists. What we do know, we'll let you know what we know, what we don't know, and with hopefully your understanding that this is very preliminary. And so this will give us hopefully a good start and build a structure for us to work on, but we're going to be limited in some of the details. So as far as our agenda goes, you can see it up here. I'm introducing the budget work session right now. I'll just go over some of the key issues, some of the process that we're intending to follow. Dana's going to present some details of the budget, which you've had posted on board docs, including the revenue and tax cap numbers that exist today, again in a preliminary fashion. We'll talk about what's to come, and then we'll go. Then we'll answer any questions that we can and go from there.
And just as a housekeeping element here, the budget information tax cap schedule is there as well, but these carry over. Karen carries them over from session to session, so it's a great comparative tool. You'll see, 125 compared to 218 and how things have changed. So it's a really nice structure.
Okay, so in terms of key factors, again, just to emphasize that this is very preliminary. There's a lot we don't know. Of course, the budget is not balanced yet. There's plenty of work to be done, and today we're just going to get the ball rolling. Our initial draft right now just maintains our current staff and programs. It preserves all our materials and equipment with some increases, and then it includes an estimate of salary increases. We know what the percentage increase is, but in terms of the employee by employee impact, or how that percentage impacts each employee, and then how that contributes to the total cost, that's going to come with time. In terms of some highlights, we do know some things, and we're going to let you know what they are. First of all, the CPIU, which is what the tax cap is built on, has been determined, and that's 2.44%. And that means with the tax cap law in place, we can only go with the maximum allowable growth factor, and that's 2%. So this is a true 2% tax cap. In past years, it hasn't always been that way, but this year and last year are right at 2%. So that our tax cap estimate based on Dana's initial calculation is close to that 2%. I think it's 1.99, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And then the executive branch information, like I said, some of the stuff's just emerging, right? So when I put, the final touches on this, which was today, we didn't know what the state aid proposal would be from the executive branch. Of course, the governor started talking about 230, and about 20 minutes ago, we got our first numbers. So we can't necessarily plug those in right now, but like I said, state aid has just started to emerge. So right now what you're going to see is revenue based on the tax cap, based on its initial estimate, and also based on state aid, the same state aid as we received last year. And then in terms of other factors, again, just to start providing you with numbers, some of these will change. We do know, for example, that the teacher TA contractual salary increase is approximately 3.5% next year over this year. At least that's what we're estimating, that's what the estimate was based on. And again, we'll be very specific in the coming drafts. In terms of our support staff contractual contract was 3 years. First year they had a salary increase of 2.5%. Second year, that was for this year, 2.75%. The third year, which is next year, 3%. So it's an estimate of 3%. BOCES costs we don't have yet, so we're estimating right now a 4% increase over this year. Health insurance increases we don't have yet. We should have those in a few weeks, but right now we're going with an estimate of 4%. That's probably lower than the national average, but it's higher than our average has been over the past few years. And just remember that we are self-insured through our consortium. So that's partially where the difference is. We determine what our insurance premiums are. We don't wait for, an office in New York City to tell us. We make this determination ourselves. In terms of TRS, that's the teacher retirement system. That's a high cost item for us, somewhere in the $1 million range. Right now in this budget, the expense for that is estimated at about 11% of teacher and other faculty salaries. We'll be able to be more exact with that as that gets honed in and fine-tuned. ERS, that's the employee retirement system. That's where most of our support staff, where their retirement comes from. And that's at about 15.5%. So we're utilizing that estimate again, just like we did last year. And it was very close last year to what the actual cost is. So those are some of the expense costs. In terms of the totals, right now, you're looking at, again, with this initial draft, a total budget cost of over $20 million. I guess we've crossed the Rubicon, right? We were in the 19s. For this draft, we're $20,061,399. Tax levy, this is based on the estimated tax cap, $15,984,843. And then you need to know that our expenses are higher than the tax cap. And just to remind you that the tax cap is the law which says that school districts, all school districts put their budget up to vote with the people, and that if we stay within the tax cap, we only need 50% plus 1 to pass the budget. But if we exceed the tax cap, which is an option for school boards to make, if we exceed the tax cap, we now have to get 60% or higher in the popular vote. So it's not that you must stay within tax cap, but it's much harder to have to exceed the tax cap, and that's been true with many districts that have tried over the past few years. Although with the small number of districts that tried last year, a much higher percentage of them did succeed than had been in the past. So, but it was just a handful. And we have been sticking with the tax cap since its inception. In terms of how has the tax cap changed things, this is just a graphic for you. What you can see is that the blue line, that's the CPIU, right? That's the inflation index. Has changed dramatically since, what's that first year? 06, 07, depending on the year. And our budgets have changed also, but not necessarily correlated with the CPIU until the tax cap came into effect sometime in that 13, 14 year, right? All of a sudden you see the blue line and the red line corresponding somewhat, and that's because our budgets now correspond with the index of inflation much more closely. In terms of the process, what are our plans here in terms of moving forward with the budget? We know we have revenue, we know we have expenses. We plan on starting with what we have today, and then revising our revenue and our expenses based on priorities, based on availability, based on calculations. We make good use of our future planning process here. Remember, our future planning process is when each school works with each program and each department and each grade level to try and determine priorities, what kinds of changes they would like to make for the future, and then we translate some of that into cost changes. So last year we had I think a position and a half that came out of future planning, a librarian, half-time RTI math teacher, and came out of future planning, landed on the school board's desk, became part of the budget, and over time we were able to make it work. And then that third bullet, make strategic changes to the budget based on priorities and available funding. Right? So, kind of simply put, that's what our plans are. And then in terms of things that are unknown, there's plenty that is unknown. It's not all here. But the health insurance increase is not known. We'll know that in mid-February. The actual negotiated salary increases we'll know, we hope, in mid-February. The challenge there is not just the increase, because we know what the increase is. The challenge there is we are looking at the possibility of having a number of retirees this year. And so how we're calculating those increases based on new changes, that'll be potentially somewhat of an estimate also, because we won't have hiring done in all cases when this budget is approved. So we're making some estimates there. In terms of the final property tax cap, we usually know that before the deadline of March 1st, but March 1st is the deadline for us submitting that to the state. So we absolutely have to have that done by March 1st. Our BOCES costs, what happens is we give a preliminary estimate of what kinds of services we're looking from BOCES. We've sent that in. We've submitted it on a spreadsheet at least. And they then go and calculate what it's going to cost to provide all districts that they serve. And then they come back to us in early March with what it's going to cost. At that point, we can make some final decisions about whether or not we want to or can afford to stick with some of the BOCES programming services. Final state aid amounts. So this is what the executive said today. This is what Governor Cuomo put in his budget, but this is not what the final state budget will be. What happens there is that now the legislature gets involved and they negotiate, and somewhere around April 1st, they'll come back with a final decision on the budget that'll include all aspects of the budget, including education, and then very specifically, we'll get a very detailed calculation of what state aid we should count on for next year. So that's right around April 1st. Our special education costs are always kind of a question mark, because special ed costs are based on special ed needs. And as you know from every board meeting and reading through these programs, special ed needs change. We never know when some of those changes are going to impact expenses. So we continue to sort of monitor that as we go, and frankly, sometimes we are making our best guess. Although I will say I think we've done a pretty good job in making those estimates. And then those recommended future planning expenses, we are still working on finishing up future planning. We've got a bunch of meetings tomorrow at the elementary school. There'll be a few more after that. And then we'll be able to gather that information and make some decisions. So that's just sort of a big picture overview. Dana is going to take it from here, and he's going to walk you through some of the more specific financial information. If you looked on board docs, you would have seen some spreadsheets. First one looks like this, right? It's an overview. It's a one-pager. And then the next document was the 13, 14 pages of details.
So the overview, as you're looking through here, kind of reiterates what Roger was saying, is that particularly this time of year, all these numbers are very fluid. And as you look at this budget estimate, there's already, I'm looking at it and I'm already seeing, changes. And it's just based on when I submitted this and tweaks, after submitting it. What it comes down to is right now, you see that at 20, a little over 20 million budgets. This says 20,051,051. I think the number he used was 20,061,000. So you can see that there's, it's a moving target right now. Obviously, when you look at the increases, salary increases make up nearly 50% of the increase. That's just salaries, and then you throw in the FICA number, employee retirement, the ERS, the TRS, health insurance. When you really look at it, all of that, those are kind of the fixed numbers. That's almost 90% of the big number of $758,000 in terms of the increases for next year. We're speculating in terms of the BOCES increase and all that and supplies and all, because we don't have that number. We can just go off it's 4% and look at it that way. So when you really look at it, that is the one area where we have probably the greatest flexibility is in the materials and the supplies. We have very little flexibility when it comes to the salaries and things like that, because those are negotiated. And the changes there comes in by way of retirements and things like that, so people leaving, and then how people get replaced. So really, this is just kind of a snapshot, a one-pager. The true details are in that 13-page document if you wanted to dive down into that, but I'll kind of go in order here because I think the next one is the property tax levy.
Yes.
I believe that's I have them all up, so I'm just kind of going where my tabs are.
So this is 4A now that he's on. Great.
So when you look at the property tax, what you're seeing here is actually kind of the formula that the state has come up with for us to determine, all school districts to determine what is the maximum allowable levy. Just kind of in short, we start with last year's or this current year's tax levy. That was $15,590. We use a tax base growth factor, and you'll see that there are two things here that kind of talk about a tax base. We have the tax base growth factor as well as the tax levy limits and the allowable growth factor. They are two things and they do impact. So the tax base growth factor is sitting at 0. Just to kind of give you a comparison, last year it was 1%. That is a difference of about $158,000, $159,000. That that is kind of a set number. It's you look at it, you can pull it up. It's public information. So right there already, in terms of our maximal allowable tax levy, we are 1% lower than what we started with last year. We do have a pilot. Our prior year exemptions, those come from our debt service, is where that number comes from. So last year, you look at our adjusted prior year, was $14,679,000. So then we get into the second part of it. The allowable growth factor is what Roger was talking about. It's the lesser of the CPI, or 2%. And it is 2% this year. CPI was 2.44. So when you look at that, take out our pilots, we're at $14,969,000, and then our capital expenditures that we get to add back in. That is the expected debt service that we're able to exclude for this coming year. That's why we're able to add it in. It's not part of our tax factor. That number also is kind of a moving, because one of the good things is we have 2 bonds that are up this year. The big one that was total between principal and interest, a little under $1 million, was $985,000. Plus we have an energy performance one that had a payment of about $36,000 that is coming up. This is the last year for those payments. What we are able to do is through our fiscal advisors, we are able to, because of our ban that we got this year, and with the impending bond for the next capital project, she basically was able to mirror what we had this year for our debt service for next year. So basically looking at our band and bond payment, I gave her a number of a little over $1 million, and this is what is coming off our books for debt service. Can you match that in terms of our debt service for next year so that we didn't get hit so hard in terms of our tax levy? If we weren't able to do that, that maximum allowable levy would have been -6%. We didn't want that because it looks good in the sense of, taxpayer, you're paying less, but next year when our bond kicks in, taxpayers will see an even larger jump because of that. So it kind of tries to keep it level and the same, so you're not seeing these spikes in that. So as it stands right now, we're looking at just under 1.99 in terms of a maximum allowable levy that we can raise. Obviously, this will change, could change, depending on the runs and building aid, because one of the numbers when it comes to the exemptions is what we get for state building aid. We have to deduct that amount out. We can't, it would be, we get to exclude it, but then also add it again. So we get, whatever aid we get from the state for building aid, we got to take out of our debt service, because the debt service is based on our building, and building projects. So that number might change as we move forward and the numbers come forward. Questions with the property tax
Just one
levy?
thing. I'm not familiar with the pilots. What is that?
It's a payment in lieu of taxes.
Oh, so we do that when we collect the taxes. Those are special cases.
Right.
Yeah.
Basically, an entity gets approval from the county to, instead of paying a property tax or even a town or a county tax, they agree to a specific amount that they will pay. And it's usually even based on a certain number of years. The pilots, they give them a fix, all right, you get 5 years, 6 years to do this, and then you will start paying your value on this.
Dana, was there another acronym that was used before for that? In the
No,
budget?
no.
There was
It-
something
it-
else where, I don't know, if there was another word for that or something that was on
Plenty of acronyms to go around.
Yeah. I
You think a
don't know.
tax certiorari?
No, it was
No.
something in lieu of, but I don't remember seeing the word pilots. I don't know.
Other questions on the tax levy? I think the next one up is the budget reduction schedule.
This is 5A.
So you can see here, just kind of a nice little spreadsheet saying, if this is the current budget, where do we need to be in order to basically balance our budgets? And as you can see, we're currently way at the bottom. That's not where we want to be. Of course, we want to be zero. We want to be balanced. But again, if you see that, I mean, that's a -4% tax levy, a 0.04% increase in the budget, to kind of have everything, the budget balance out is what it comes down to. The fact that we're talking January 15th here, and like I said, after submitting these, I've been working on it, and I see the first run. I'll go back tomorrow and start working on it, and these numbers will change some more as the TRS number comes, because that's not been finalized. We use 11%, but they threw out it's going to be between 8.5% and 9.5% potentially. But until you get that final number, I don't want to speculate and then throw in 8.5%, and they say, it's going to be 10%. Oops, our mistake. And then I got to come back here and say, well, I gave you some information, and the state has changed their number, so that's why we decided to keep it at 11%, because that's where it was. It's actually 10.62 this year. 11% is kind of a nice even number to stick with, and then as we get that number, it will be adjusted. And as Roger said, salaries and the teacher's retirement is a good chunk. So if you're going from 11% to 9.5% or even 9%, that's a huge reduction in terms of what we need to budget for next year. Questions on the reduction schedule?
Great spreadsheet.
I could thank Leonard, for all of these things in terms of, having them at my disposal. It's been truly, it's been fun, and I say that it's been fun to go through, dive into this, and really, weed out everything and So it's been an enjoyable process. The even better spreadsheet is the next one, the 13 pager. I believe that's the one we're on next, right? Or did I miss one?
No, it's 3B.
The details? Or the or the revenue? What's next?
The budget detail.
Yeah.
That's the last one.
Okay.
Right, the 13 pager.
It's 3B.
Yeah. So this one is our budgets. I mean, that is what it would look like if you were sitting in front of our finance manager system and you're pulling it up. This is how it's broken down by our codes. And where all the expenses is. You'll see the 17-18 budget is there, what it was last year, this current year, 18-19, I even left in the projected expenses last year, just kind of see how it kind of changed last year. And then 19 and 20, a lot of it's similar. You can see even the percent change. There's some changes already made in terms of the 19-20 as I hear back from the principals in terms of how they want to allocate their money for materials and supplies. But really, I mean, I'm not going to go sit here and go through this line by line. It really is broken down by code. There's curriculum development, there's administrative code. You can look to see where all of our expenses are, our appropriations are, right from, from paying Dr. Catania all the way down to the overtime and the paying for materials for soccer. It's a really detailed spreadsheet. Really, what if you look as you're going through and you look at it, so you can obviously focus on the last couple columns because that's the 19-20 cycle adjustments there. So as we get that and as we get final numbers, that's kind of the columns I start to focus on and making those adjustments along the way. I do kind of want to reiterate that all of these numbers are moving, and even though you might see an adjustment in one code right now, that could change as we go through the process. Could go up, could go down, whatever. But you'll see as you scroll all the way down, in the end, it shows you, what that final number is. 20,061. You can already see the second to last column, 19,995. So with adjustments that I've already started making, you can see that there's already been changes from what the initial number was, a little over 20 million, to right now just under 20 million. And those are just kind of minor tweaks over the last couple of days. And that's not even getting into the big things with retirement and healthcare and BOCES and things like that. Excuse me. And then the very last page is the revenue. This is what you would typically see for budget status reports that we have later on. I mean, that's basically what you're going to see for the revenue side. Other than the real property tax, that's sitting at basically 15.9. I've left everything else because that is really driven by state aid and things like that, and some unknowns. I left those the same as what they currently are at this point. So that's where you can see that's right now, if all things remain the same in terms of state aid and stuff like that, we're sitting at about $19,603,000 of revenue coming in. And if we went with just the adjustments of the $19,995,000, you can see that's a difference of $300 and some thousand just with that. But not knowing, tomorrow I'll go back with the governor's first run and I'll start adjusting these numbers here in the revenue side based off of his numbers that he just posted tonight. And these will change.
Questions on the revenue?
Any questions for Dana on all that?
No, I found that there was no acronym. It was actually just completely spelled out. Payment.
Oh, okay.
I just remember visually seeing it on a line, and I don't remember seeing the pilot, but it's right there.
I think the detailed budget is good bedtime reading.
Sounds interesting.
Karen, you'll put this slide PowerPoint on? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
In terms of looking ahead, so tonight is our initial budget session. our first draft. We'll have what we'll call a first draft because we'll have a lot more confidence in it. On February 5th, that's our next meeting. We'll have a work session there. We'll have additional work sessions. We have them scheduled February 26th, March 19th. We know on March 1st that tax levy will be done. The final budget draft will be ready, we hope. And, sometimes there are some delays surrounding the state budget. But by that April 2nd meeting, the Board of Ed is expected to adopt the budget at the April 2nd meeting. Then we'll do budget hearings. Those are the public presentations of the budget, formally May 7th and May 14th. Informally, we'll also do some presentations in the community and in the schools. Finally, May 21st is the budget vote, and that's when we decide, or when we learn whether or not the community supports the decisions we make here.
Does the community usually?
We've been very successful in the last, we've been very successful for a number of years. I forget what it was last year, 75 to 80% support. So what we're getting is a much higher percentage of support, but we're also getting far lower participation than we used to get. And I think for the most part, I guess the speculation is that with the tax cap, as long as districts sort of try and stay within that, there tends to be very little, I guess, interest in the election. I think when the interest rises when districts are making a case for probably for more. We want to make sure that people have an opportunity to ask questions or provide us with feedback. So, Karen will post this on board docs, and it has her email address, the LP District Clerk email address, and that's a way for you or community members to provide feedback or to ask questions. And we'll try and be as interactive with the public as they would like us to be.
Do we want to publish like that slide or where we have the board meetings listed now in the school newsletter, so parents know that they can go to board docs and look at it?
That's a good idea. I'm looking to figuring out how to do that. Any other questions or comments?
Good, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, and our initial budget work session, we'll go right into the meeting since it's 6:30. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of 5A, which is meeting minutes from the December 18th regular Board of Education meeting, and A7, which is the special education packet. I have a motion to accept this consent agenda. Thank you, Colin. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Thank you, Dan. Any discussion? You voting on here?
Yeah, I
Okay,
opened
there
it
is.
up.
Okay.
I have the thing open for Jen and Connie to use the computer for their presentation. Seven yes.
7 yes, 0 no, the motion passes.
Hi.
Come on in.
Okay. Awkward as usual. Hi.
If you don't come in, we don't have a meeting.
Oh,
that's right, that's right.
man. Now
I feel special.
For the good of the cause, it's the time where we set aside a portion of the meeting for public participation. Anybody would like to speak? I believe you all will be shortly, right?
That's right.
Great, so we'll move right on to reports. First item under the reports is the guidance report on diverse curriculum opportunities. You didn't even need to sit down, did you?
Look at that, perfect timing.
Good timing.
I just wanted to, introduce our counselors to you and welcome them here. Connie Hammaker has now been here, gosh, Connie, what, 6 years?
Seven.
Seven years in her 7th year as a high school counselor. And Jennifer DeLolio might be a new face to some of you because Jennifer, we hired this year. Jennifer's serving in place of Lynn Gosling while she's on her 1-year leave. Jennifer's been a breath of fresh air and just a wonderful addition here, just getting involved in everything and anything. It's been a really good year with really both of our counselors. So really happy to have you here. We appreciate you coming. I appreciate you coming. And we look forward to hearing you talk about courses and curriculum.
Who's first?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll start off.
So this is what you're getting. You can just click through. Yeah, you wanted to hit slideshow.
Sorry, I'm not used to this computer. Okay, hi everyone. I'm Jennifer. I'm the middle school counselor. I'm going to talk a little bit about diverse curriculum opportunities. So basically, what I've done is list everything that we offer outside of the 4 core classes. So any class that you might see on a student schedule that isn't one of the 4 core classes. So we have our mini classes, which are 10-week courses, so a full quarter. They meet daily, and all students rotate through them. Then we have our electives, which are chorus band, creative writing, which is in 7th and 8th grade, and robotics, which is only for 8th grade. And then this group over here, language skills review, which I'll talk about a little later on, is just a class for 6th graders. And then we have foreign languages as well, which is French and Spanish. And students in middle school are actually working towards their high school credit. So hopefully they can successfully finish that in 7th and 8th grade, and then move on to high school and continue if they would like, but have the credit fulfilled already. The academic category that I have over here, so for advanced courses in 6th and 7th grade, we have advanced math, and then in 8th grade we have algebra and living environment, which is where they're working towards their high school credit, so it's a more advanced course. And then some of the extra support classes that we offer math and English learning labs, which is the extra support classes for the students that need it. And we have reading, and then we have our 8th grade alternate education program, which is something that the students make that decision in 7th grade, that they need that contained classroom to move forward and gain that confidence before going to high school. So then here, we have some of our 8th grade artwork that Mr. Robinson shared with me. So in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, all students will rotate through art, music, and computers. Those are pretty fluid courses, so between 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, it really picks up where it left off the year before. Technology, the 7th and 8th grade course, and the kids really look forward to that. It's something that it's very hands-on, so the kids just enjoy being down in that room and kind of working with all the different tools and stuff with Mr. LaValle. In 6th grade, students move between iClass and robotics, which I'll talk about on a later slide, but it's a continuation between iClass and robotics, and the students only have it in 6th grade, but then again can take the robotics elective come 8th grade. So here I'm talking a little bit just about the robotics options that we have. In 6th grade, like I said, it's a mini, so all students will rotate through it. And it really is that introduction to coding and robotics. Students work in groups and kind of get their hands on for the first time what it's like to code and work with the different programs with Mr. Carlson. And they also focus a lot on independent time in that class, so working on projects of interest, so something that they really want to work towards. In 8th grade, it is an elective, so all students that are in there, they choose to be in there. And it's a full semester course. So for the first 10 weeks, students really focus on building and programming, while the second 10 weeks, they're focusing more on writing full lines of coding to have their own robots move that they've built. So it's kind of a continuation there and a little bit more advanced than what they got in 6th grade. And then this, I just expanded a little bit on some of the classes that I mentioned that might not seem at first glance what they really are. In 6th grade, like I said, we have language skills review, which is first period of the day for our 6th graders. And the team really develops what that class looks like together. So at times they're working on a project. We also use that time for All-Stars, Skillful Minds, and Digital Citizenship. So All-Stars is a class that our prevention team works with 6th graders on, things like bullying. Skillful Minds is a class that actually myself, Dr. Miller, and Ms. Lindsay push in. We do some mindfulness coping skills techniques. It's about 20 minutes on Monday mornings. It's cute. The kids enjoy kind of taking that deep breath. Digital Citizenship is a class. Ms. Patno teaches that class, our librarian. It's all on internet safety, and they do a lot of stuff on how to use library databases, and they work on research projects, and so she uses that time as well. Next, we also have 6th grade takes I class, which is kind of their time to, I guess, gain independence and really learn how they work in a group as well. So they do a lot of cooking and sewing, and really a big reflection, a big focus on the reflective piece there. So how do you work in a team? How do you kind of problem solve? I guess is a good way of putting it. Creative writing is an elective for our 7th and 8th graders, and that is a continuation. So most 7th graders that choose to take creative writing in 7th grade pick up where they left off in 8th grade. And it's a time for students to really dive into the creative process and what that looks like. And yeah, they enjoy that time. And then computers is a mini, so all 6th, 7th, and 8th graders take it. It's a continuation. It's 30 days of keyboarding, and they can be working, they're usually working on big, long projects in iMovie or Google or Photoshop and things along those lines. That's pretty much all I have for you guys today.
Great. That's wonderful. Thank you.
So if I can ask
Yeah, I can go back to the slide too if that's all.
Oh, no, that's fine. The minis are, all students rotate through those,
Yes,
correct?
all
So
students.
do you get feedback on what the popular ones are? And
Yeah. So technology is a big one, and
Okay.
the kids really look forward to it. Like right now, they're working on a project. Brian had them focusing on why a car is safe. So like how a seatbelt works, how a airbag works, and then they built their own cars that would be safe enough for an egg to go down a ramp, and then not let the egg crack. The kids go so far as to write obituaries for the eggs that crack. So they enjoy that class. Yeah. And creative writing is actually a big one too, even though it's an elective, but the kids really like that. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other
Thank you.
students?
Well, it's
I
attached
think
there.
it's
Oh,
right.
it is? Yep. I just click on it.
Oh, thank you. And I get to actually present across slideshow.
PC person.
I know, can you tell?
Yeah, I know.
Okay, as Roger introduced, I'm Connie Hamaker, I'm the high school counselor. If you've had an 8th grader recently, probably in the last few years, some of this will look a little bit familiar, but I did take down a few slides. So first thing, and I do have an example if you need to see it, we do start in the 8th grade with a 4-year plan. So students meet with the middle school counselor and they have a 4-year plan of kind of, they sketch out courses as far as they want. Some of them usually go to 10th grade, some go all the way through high school, and then that follows them through each year. So each year they'll meet with me to go over courses and decide kind of what they want to take the next year and make sure that we're still meeting their educational plan no matter what that may be. So sometimes that changes, sometimes it stays the same. It's fun to look back on it each year. But this is overall what a student from Lake Placid does need to graduate. They need a minimum of 22.5 credits. If you can kind of do the quick math in your head, it's pretty easy to achieve if you stick to the bare minimum. A lot of students graduate with many more than 22.5 credits. And this is just a breakdown, and we'll go through it by slide. So, in English, students do need 4.5 credits, so they have to take English 9th through 12th, and they also have to take an elective for another. So in the high school, we work on a semester, so that's 2 quarters. We're in the middle school, they're on a quarter mini system, we're on a semester system. An elective is typically 0.5 credit, which is 1 semester, 1 half of the year. A student can, if they are taking AP English in either the 11th or 12th grade, that will satisfy that English elective, that 0.5 that they need to graduate. History, they do need 4.0 credits. So again, they're taking English and history all 4 years that they are here. They can take the AP level at their junior level, and for government and economics, we have the seniors take 1 semester of government and 1 semester of economics, but we have a few different options for them. They can take a criminal justice to get their government course, which focuses basically on criminal justice, and Model OAS, which is actually a class that is a full year where they cover government and economics, and we're partnered with SUNY Plattsburgh for that with the Latin American Studies program. Math is, they need 3 credits to graduate. Typically a student will graduate with 4 credits, that is recommended. We do have the Algebra A. So when students come up from the 8th grade, as you saw, they can take Algebra 1 in 8th grade and achieve that high school credit on their transcript, and they would typically go into geometry and then Algebra 2, pre-calc, calc, if they're going that pathway. But students can also be recommended to come into Algebra A, which is basically a 2-year program for the algebra. So our Algebra 1 students will take the Regents after 1 year, our Algebra A students will take the Regents after 2 years. So there are a couple pathways that students can do. This last year, maybe the year before, Mr. Wood maybe able to say, we did implement the lab with algebra, so every algebra student in Algebra 1 does have an algebra lab every other day now to kind of help with the fundamentals and the basics to help get them through the Regents and prep them to move on to geometry, Algebra 2, etc. We also have a non-Regents geometry, which we put into place a couple of years ago for those students who aren't maybe Algebra A and Algebra B and need another math option, but no, they don't want to take the Regents, they don't want the Advanced Regents diploma, they're not going to go to Algebra 2, and it's been pretty successful for the students who are in there. And we do have some students who are in there and decide they want to try the Regents, so, and though it's few and far between, but they do pretty well. We also have Algebra 2, and then they can go into pre-calculus, calculus. Financial algebra is also business math, you can think of it that way. Intro to college algebra and statistics are our bridge courses, well, pre-calc and calc are too, which I will talk about, and those are semester each. So our students can go into there and get college credit. Science is also 3 credits. Again, it's very typical for students to take 4 years of science. We've switched it around a little bit, so every 9th grader takes living environment with a lab, and then they can move into earth science and or chemistry. We would like them to move into earth science, but many of them will move into chemistry and then physics. All of those sciences are lab science, which means they have a lab every 3 days, every 3 to 4 days, and they have a Regents tied to it. Students can also go into environmental science for their 3rd science, which is a non-Regents, non-lab science. We have 3 AP options for science. We have AP Biology, AP Environmental Science, and AP Physics. Each one has a few different requirements, prereqs to get in. An example is every student who goes into an AP Science does have to complete chemistry successfully along with the Regents. And AP Physics, you must have taken calc or be taking calculus while you are enrolled in it. So that's just a couple of examples. Foreign language, like Jen said, students, if they pass in 8th grade, that credit comes over with them. Most students do come into the high school with the credit already for language, but they are encouraged to continue on if they're interested. To get an Advanced Regents diploma, a student does need to get to the level 3 of a language, and our level 4 and 5 for both French and Spanish is bridge credit. So bridge credit, I think you're all aware, is we're partnered with North Country Community College. Right now we have 12 bridge programs or courses. We can have up to 15, and I have numbers on another slide of who's involved. And we've been able to help offset the cost for some families and students for that, so that's been wonderful to have that for them. If a student does not pass French or Spanish 8, they are put into a language 1. It kind of varies year to year based on the need. Every student must have 1 credit at least minimum of art or music. Many do go on, many take chorus and or band all 4 years. And then if they are arts oriented and passionate, they do take art all 4 years. So they can take a studio art. Every student who wants to move on in art has to take that studio art. They can't take any of these other options without having that. And we also offer drawing and painting, ceramics, photography, studio and portfolio development as a new class this year. And basically what our new art teacher has done, Mr. Robinson, is he was realizing students weren't as prepped for AP Studio Art coming into it as they should be. So this course is simply there to help prep them for AP Studio Art. We have, I think there's 9 students in there, and it's been really successful. And it's also helping 2 of our college-bound students who are looking to go into art programs to prepare their portfolios for their application process. Mandatory electives, I just call them mandatory electives because students have to take them. They have to take physical education every year, 9 through 12, that is 0.5 every single year, so end up with 2. They take health in the 10th grade, so they take that for 1 semester. They can take a computer technology any year. We do try to fit it into their freshman or sophomore year to kind of have that over with. We have a few seniors scrambling as the quarter ends, or the semester ends, to get it in for the second semester. Same with English. We do try to have students achieve that in the 9th and 10th grade, so we're not scrambling. But again, if a student knows they're going to go into AP English, they're probably going to wait and have that credit waived that way. I'm not going to read all these because you are all fully capable of doing that. These are elective options for the high school. Well, this was our sheet from last year. We are in the process of creating it. We've added a few new courses, we've taken away a few, but for the most part, they all get picked by a kid. I mean, we have some really great options. The students tend to really like the technology ones. We've incorporated Science Olympiad this year, Senior Seminar and Learning Lab. All seniors take Senior Seminar, and Learning Labs we offer in English, Algebra, and History. So students are able to take that. Even if they don't have to, they have that option. So our bridge courses, like I said, are college credit awarded through North Country Community College. This year we have 38 students enrolled, so that's individually. Many of them are enrolled in more than one. So that's where you can, if you're doing that fast math in your head, first of all, good for you, that's really amazing. But you can see there's many more. So we do have 38 students. It is for junior and senior level only. So freshmen and sophomores cannot participate due to the age and the expectations through the bridge program itself that's set up through North Country. And these are the options we have this year. We are looking to, I met with the North Country community person, Luke, today, and we're actually entertaining the idea of putting in a computer science or a computer coding class for some of our students, but we're in the baby stages of that. So, and AP courses this year, we do have 34 students. Again, some of them are in more than one, but we do have 34 individual students. Typically, this is also the junior and senior level students, and you can kind of see those numbers broken down. AP Physics is not offered every year. It's really based on need. We have 5 students in there. Last year, we had absolutely no one who was interested or probably who would have wanted to. So AP Physics kind of comes and goes as the need is there. And AP Studio Art, we do not have anyone in it. Again, our two seniors who are pursuing art took it last year as juniors, so they took the studio portfolio class to perfect their portfolios for this year. So that's just kind of how that worked out this year. There is a fee of $93 this year per class, per AP. They take the AP exam at the end of the year. And again, the district now, thanks to all of you, is able to help with some of that cost for some of our families. So that's been really great to take some of that stress and burden off. Community service, they do need 40 hours beginning in the 6th grade. And that gets them 0.5. Some of the seniors are testing that policy right now, but they will not graduate without those 40 hours that they've been able to do since 6th grade. Unless they transfer in, then we just kind of, sophomore they can have 30, et cetera, et cetera. We do have the Adirondack Educational Center. We do have the career and tech programs. Right now we have 6 programs. That's their junior and senior year. We have 44 students involved. So I believe the senior class we send about 24 and then 20 in the juniors. So this program has grown so much in the 7 years I've been here. It's just amazing how many students are involved. And then we also have the PASS program, and that's alternative ed for the 9th through 12th. In the 9th grade they can go, well, all 4 years they go for English, history, and they usually get an elective in. They take that over at the Adirondack Ed Center in Saranac Lake. Students, when they are a junior, they can opt to be there all day, so they can be in what we call Pass 3 and their career tech program. Our career tech programs are auto tech, building trades, culinary, cosmetology, health occupation, and natural resource science. And natural resource science was huge last year. This year, building trades was huge, so we'll see what happens. Next, the auto tech program, they have a new teacher in there as well, and that's growing rather fast. So it's a really great option for students. It's wonderful that we can offer this for all grade levels because I really think it helps get some kids through high school. That's just my little, right there, just gonna say that. We also have New Vision programs. That also kind of varies how many we send. We have one in the healthcare New Vision program, and that's partnered with, it's through Adirondack Ed Center, but they actually take their classes and do all their rotations in the hospital. And we have a coding and gaming. Last year we had one, this year we had no one in there, but last year we had 3, I believe, in New Vision. So it just kind of changes based on interest for students. Diplomas, do you want me to go through those?
Sure.
Okay, so these are the types of diplomas you can get through the state. It could change next year. So a Regents diploma is required for all students graduating from a New York State high school. So they must pass the course and the Regents for algebra, living environment, global, U.S. history, and English, ELA. So all students must pass that Regents exam to get it. They can also achieve with honors, which means they have an average score of 90 or higher on all of those completed Regents exams. There are a couple different, when I'm going through this, there are a couple different pathways to achieve these. So it doesn't have to be this. So if, let's say a student transfers in their junior year, they do have to pass all 5, but if they just came to us with geometry completed, we can give them the geometry exam, and that can count, it can counteract and take away the algebra. So there are a few pathways that students can choose to take to achieve these. The Advanced Regents Diploma, which you've heard me mention a few times, is all 5 of those diplomas, plus geometry, algebra 2, another physical science, which is our science, chemistry, or physics. Many students will take at least our science and chemistry, if not all 3. And then they must have foreign language through the level 3, so through their sophomore year typically, or an art requirement, which is 5 credits of art. So you can see where the 4-year plans can come into play for that, because if a student really wants the Advanced Regents Diploma but just doesn't see themselves taking Algebra 2, then we have to be able to fit in 5 credits of art in 4 years. So that's kind of where that comes into play. And again, with honors, average score of 90 or higher. And we also have math and science mastery. So it's an official stamp on the diplomas, and that just shows that students have scored 85 or higher on all of their math Regents and all of their science. You can get one or the other, you can get both. But that is now in place. I do have an example of a 4-year plan if anyone wants it. I can also email it, Karen, to you if you want to put it up. And we also have, every year they fill out basically future goal, plan, activities they enjoy, what they deem their strengths and weaknesses, things like that. So we work on that every 4 years and kind of collect that. What that can also help us to do, let's say a CTE student just can't pass that global Regents. We can use their CTE program as a pathway for them to get that Regents. However, there's a lot of paperwork and hours that have to be documented for that, so this also helps to just go into their portfolios.
Do you receive a lot of parental input when you have these students coming in to sit with you or whatever the process is?
A lot. Not every student, no, but
Okay.
definitely.
Okay.
Yes, I have a lot of emails and phone calls.
Okay.
Students are supposed to get everything signed, and then that also sparks some students or parents will come in and meet with their child.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was just a question. How often does the state change the diploma requirements? I don't remember.
Mr. Wood, do you want to
It's a
take
loaded
this
question.
after? I don't know if they change the requirements so much
Right.
as the pathways
Right.
to achieve
Okay.
those diplomas. So there's also a low pass option. The pathways, I would say, change every year.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think in the last 5 years, they've
Yeah.
added a pathway.
Like
At
we
least
keep
one,
sheets on
yeah.
hand because we just
Right.
don't know.
Too much time on our hands.
And 1 year a lot will pass. I mean, and they're transitioning in. So we did ELA as a brand new test. Global is a new test. Everything's kind of becoming a new test. U.S. history's next. So kind of depends on what students do in the state.
Connie, in one of your slides, you mentioned language 1.
Mhm.
Is that, if they fail to, or they're unsuccessful with French or Spanish 8,
Yes.
does that mean they take French or Spanish 1?
They do. So we usually do one language and that they have to go into, but we're finding obviously if you've taken French for 3 years and then just put in Spanish 1, it's a little difficult. So this year actually we've split it. We have a few students on a grad point with Spanish 1, which is a computer program, and then we have others in French 1. So we're trying to meet all the needs of the students, but yes, if they fail, they go into a language 1.
And thank you for calling it the Adirondack Educational Center.
Yes.
I'd like to see that change from
I would
BOCES
too.
to
I've said it
Adirondack
for 7 years,
Education
but the students still, even if they go there, I'm like, hey, how was the center today? The what?
What's that?
I'm like, BOCES. Oh yeah, BOCES was great. It's like, there's no stigma for them, there are for other people.
Thank you.
Yeah, any other questions? Wow, I did a good job then.
Thanks so much for coming.
Second, I'll see you. All right, next up is our wellness report. Sean is with us today. This just briefly is in accordance with board policy 5405, the student wellness policy, and it states that the wellness coordinator shall report every 3 years to the board and to the public on implementation and effectiveness of this policy. Sean is the district's director of food service, and as was pointed out in the narrative portion of the agenda, Sean is part-time and packs a lot into this part-time status. So on behalf of the board, we thank you and for your dedicated service and commitment to our district.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me tonight to talk about some of the things we've done around here. I guess we'll start with we're talking about changing things every year. We'll talk about the USDA, the new USDA rules that have changed this year. The whole grain requirement has changed to 50% whole grain instead of 100% whole grain. So that should go a long way in, adding some more choice in our kids' diets. Nobody likes whole grain stuff that much, so I think that will boost participation a bit. Also, Governor Cuomo has started the 30% rule this year, so that if we can source 30% of our ingredients from New York State, we'll get another quarter per meal for our reimbursable meals. So I've been working towards procuring more local ingredients. Currently, we get eggs, apples, carrots, and milk locally, and we're at about 15% at this point. So we've got a long way to go there, but I've been working on that. So continue to try to overhaul our NutriKit system as we bring in new ingredients. That's a big process. Every nutritional value has to be added into the system, so that takes a lot of time. We've started some new programs this year, Taste of Tuesday at the elementary school, where we try a new menu item or just something different that just to open up these kids' minds to new foods. So that's been rather successful. We've tried a turkey maple cheddar ciabatta that was one of our bi-weekly specials this week. We sold 13 today, so that's awesome. We've done whole grain raviolis, squash 3 ways, coconut water, trout nuggets, all of which we take a vote on at the end of the day, and if there's enough votes, we put it on the next month's menu. So I've been working towards forming a new and improved wellness team involving parents, teachers, and community members. It's a slow process. I'm not here a lot, so it's hard to keep everybody on the same page in respect to that. But I've been working on revamping our food safety policy that hasn't been updated since 2009. So I've been slowly digging through that. I've made attempts to start a student advisory board to assist in menu planning and help boost involvement. That's also a slow process with all the extracurricular activities, and it's hard to bring kids in on that, but slowly but surely we're working our way towards that. I'm also currently working on a equipment grant through Child Nutrition to try to get some funding for a hood at the elementary school, which as me and Roger have talked a lot, I think we need. We've focused on scratch cooking a lot in the last few years. We make all our own taco meat now. We cook all our own hamburgers. We make all our own soups, which again can be a challenge with staffing. But I've been staggering staff between buildings to try to meet the needs. What else do I don't have any fancy PowerPoint. Maybe next year. Maybe next year I'll get that far. All the kitchen staff is now ServSafe certified, which was a big thing last year to get done. I'm working on sending staff to the professional cooking seminar over the summer. I went to the Managing Your Child Nutrition program last summer, and it was very informative, and I learned a lot and networked a lot with other food service directors from across the state, so I think that the staff would also gain a lot from that. We've been just working on team building in the kitchens and attitudes. Again, a slow process, but baby steps. Trying to make the team more accountable in their efficiency and their processes. Again, slow work, but we're making steps towards improvement. I think that's pretty much what I have here. Any questions?
I just want to give you some positive feedback, Sean. I just had the opportunity to talk to a number of different people, including teachers and students, and your soups are, get high marks with everybody that I talk to, and a number of other things. But I think great job, and that's been one of our objectives, is to really get this on track. And it seems to be going in a really good direction.
Well,
so
good.
Thank you.
Thanks for saying that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think you're to be commended for the 20 hours a week that you're on property. You seem to be very, very busy.
Yes.
And also that you are really kind of thinking outside of the box within a budget that I'm sure is quite tight.
Right.
To try to offer different things to students. So
Absolutely.
I think it's great. Great job. Thank you.
Well, and I'm constantly working with purveyors to find better quality products at a better price. That takes a lot of time as well, but it's in the long run it's worth every minute I put into it.
Plus you've got a tough group that you're working with. That age group is
Yes,
tough. So
yeah. Well, and that's I started the Taste of Tuesday at the elementary school specifically because if you can get them while they're young,
yes.
You can't get these sixth graders to try anything.
Right.
So,
I think it's good.
and it comes. I ask all the kids, how was lunch today? How was lunch today? And now I've come to the conclusion that if you get, it's all right, then it's pretty good. But I look in the waste cans at the end of every lunch, and every year that's progressively went down.
No,
so.
Great.
It doesn't matter how healthy the food is if they refuse to eat it. So, we're getting there,
I'm a little surprised, though, that the USDA has switched back to 50% whole grain.
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with the producers, they're not making, or they'll make one product, which doesn't leave a lot of choice, And that's another thing that I've really worked towards, is offering more choice at not only the elementary school, but the high school as well. At the high school, there's usually, 5 choices a day over there between the grab-and-go coolers,
right.
And whatever's hot on the line. So I think that's helped boost participation, Still not where I'd like it to be, but, when I started, 130 lunches was a good day. and now if we're hitting 160 today, something is
great.
wrong, you know, so, you know, slow but sure, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, that's great, thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'll start working on that slideshow.
Okay.
You don't want to hear my report on the budget?
We'll stay for that.
I'll watch it.
You see numbers?
I'll watch it, yeah.
Thank you.
They knew what's coming. They know what's coming. Make sure you go watch YouTube.
They've left us.
Hello again.
Yeah, well, that was very, I thought that was very interesting, both presentations.
There's a little politics involved in the grain reduction too.
Yeah, I'm sure,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
And one thing you didn't mention is also the sodium has changed for next year too, where they're lightening up where they're going to allow a larger number in terms of sodium in, yep,
How bizarre.
yep.
Pendulum is swinging again the other way. I also think that the counselor presentations were, at least for me anyway, especially beneficial as a new board member to really get this overview, so I thought that was great.
If the state adds any more diplomas, we're going to have to add another page
Yeah.
to the graduation program because of all the symbols.
I can't keep up with it either, just.
Yeah.
I was like, there's a few more since I've been in school here. Jeez.
We have two.
Yeah.
Regents and
Regents or
non-regents.
not.
That's
Yeah.
right. School diploma, regents diploma. There you go.
All right, next under reports is the budget status report. Dana, you're up.
Well, as you can see, we keep spending money as much as we try not to, but our property tax at this point is kind of staying steady. We're not going to really see a change there until probably the end of the year. At this point, any collections made with property tax goes to the county, but in the end of the year, the county settles up with us. So I envision that number will kind of stay that way until the end. We haven't seen huge change in terms of our revenue. Our state aid is going up a little bit, which is typical once we get through the first couple of months, where our state aid payments go to paying for our teachers' retirements. The way the state has it is they say this is what we're getting state aid. So rather than us sending the states a check for teachers' retirement, they basically just take it out of the state aid. So the first couple state aid payments are offset by that, so the money doesn't change hands. Why send them $100,000 just for them to send us $100,000? But now we're in that point where we will start seeing an increase in the state aid, state and federal aid because of that process. We're beyond that now. Use of money, and appropriated fund balance doesn't change. That will be there all year. So really, if you look at it, no real change from last year to this year in terms of overall for revenue. We're sitting at a little over 86% has been collected, which is, if you were to go back historically, that's kind of about where we are typically for the month of January. And as I was joking, in terms of expenditures, that does change, because we pay our employees, we pay our benefits. Monthly. You saw last month that Liam had the question about a couple of the outstanding checks that were bigger. One was going to BOCES. We paid them on a monthly basis. But again, we are pretty much on track. A little over 42% of our expenditures have been spent. When it comes to that debt service, you'll see that has been a change there. We had a couple. We had a couple bills come due December. Again, that's typical. June and December are when we pay for them. So that's why you see that number there is bigger because of that. So all said, we're year to date about 8 million. So we're not quite halfway through in terms of what our budgeted expense is. Questions on the budget status? If you look at the other documents, it kind of shows you the other side. I showed you the 13-page, what it looks like appropriated. That I think it's a 9-page document, 5-page documents through the ST3. That kind of shows you by code where the budget is and what we've spent specifically through those codes. So if you have had time to look through that 5-page document, that really kind of gives you a nice summary as to where the money is being spent on a monthly basis.
Great. Thank you. Treasurer's report.
Money in, money out. That's what this is. You can see total balance from previous month, a little over $14 million. We had total receipts of $286,000, 1.3 million in terms of disbursements. If you look at it, ending cash balance, just under $13 million in terms of what we have as the books. You'll see in terms of our reserves, on the next side of the depository, you'll see in terms of cash sweep, that's basically money we owe when we have large sums of money in our checking accounts. We move it into the sweep account. That's kind of where it stays. It actually, what it does is MBT gets moved out to other banks. So it's not just sitting in MBT. And then when we need it, we will ask for some of that back, and it gets brought back into it. But it's one way to kind of keep our money dispersed over multiple banks, not sitting just in the NBT. Total outstanding right now, $156,000. The biggest outstanding is $109,000. I looked that up, Liam.
You knew I was going to ask.
That's right. That is to Mosaic, our architectural firm. We had a couple bills come due last month for that. And last month, the big ones were to BOCES. As you know, also this month we did pay the first installment of the BOCES capital project. That was due this month, so that did go out. We'll have the next one due in July.
That's not reflected in this, though. That'll be next report.
Yes, it probably went out. It was a January invoice, so it's probably going out this month.
Okay.
Right. So you'll see it will be a larger than normal check to BOCES for that reason. Yeah, our normal monthly bill plus that one. Yeah. Questions on the treasury report?
Great.
Thank you.
Dr. Catania, you are up.
Thanks. I'm going to save my feedback on the elementary school safety team playground discussion for Colleen when she comes back. I know she's interested. But I did want to give you just a sort of a brief overview of today's state aid presentation. The governor did present his state of the state and the executive budget today, and just some highlights. He proposes to increase state funding for public education by approximately $1 billion. That's a 3.6% increase, with some distribution very specific to what he's interested in doing, giving more money to needy schools within large districts, and making sure that large districts are distributing to the neediest schools at a higher rate than to other schools. But the $1 billion is higher than it was last year when the executive budget came out, so I thought that was encouraging. Other areas of increases are pre-K, $15 million, after-school programs, $10 million, early college, high school is $9 million. This is all increases based on increasing beyond what they already are designated. And then $1.5 million more to the master teacher program, finally $50 million to community schools. Community schools is a new and exciting effort. Right now, we do not receive any funding for community schools, so that's an unfortunate part of that. He did put out a number of other proposals that either directly or indirectly would impact schools if they were to pass. He's proposing to make the tax cap permanent. Right now, it is not permanent. He's proposing a diversity agenda where schools are doing a better job of instructing kids in diverse populations and interests and issues. He's proposing to establish a state holiday on Election Day, which, among other things, would impact school on that day, I imagine. He's proposing to implement a red flag law. If you have heard of those allow school employees to petition the courts when there's a high risk for safety to remove weapons from a child's home. And then he's also proposing to raise the legal smoking age to 21 statewide. Right now it's a county by county effort. So those are all, I thought, kind of interesting. We'll see where they go. So what Dana and I will do, we'll review the state aid run that we just came in an hour or two ago, and as Dana said, we'll start, putting that in, and we'll use that as our next estimate, knowing that it's not the final. The final will come in April. So that's the state aid update. In terms of the safety team, the elementary school safety team did meet and discussed the playground, among other things. We're also talking about safety in terms of transportation issues, drop-offs and pickups, things like that. But specifically for the playground, we have, I think awareness all around is increasing in terms of safety. For example, not only have, sort of our ongoing discussions sort of raise the bar and what people are thinking about and doing, but we have implemented some strategies. One example is the security cameras, which also do allow us to observe the playground at the elementary school to monitor in addition to the people who are there. But just some of the issues some of the ideas that have come out of that. One of them is, lockdown. Like, what do you do when you're, we know what we do when we're inside of the school building for a lockdown. What do you do when you're on the playground? I think that question came up. Their answer to that has to do with the trail. We've made dramatic improvements to the trail, which is behind the elementary school playground. You really can't see it through the trees, but it is there, and kids are very knowledgeable of it. So they're identifying access routes from the playground to the trail as a place to gather, should there be a need to do that. In addition, they're looking at the parking, right? There are parking places in the parking lot, but they're the ones that are very specifically closest to the playground. They're talking about recommending new signage that would restrict parking in those spaces, except for evening events and big events when it's needed, so that if a car is parked there, it raises an additional alarm. And then finally, we've been talking about, this is partially for safety and partially for traffic flow. We've been talking about whether or not it would be advisable to put a gate in the second entrance, not the main entrance to the school, but the second entrance to the loop lot, and to have some kind of gate there that would essentially shut off that lot during the day. And again, I think what that would do is, if there is anybody there or trying to get there, that would raise further alarms about that. We're also very concerned about this traffic flow, the transportation discussion. We've had a lot of transportation discussions lately, and some of those I know you've had in your ad hoc committee, and some of those we've had separately, talking about ways we could improve just sort of the daily safety of crossing the street, crossing the parking lot, and cars and buses coming and going, and that gate would help that as well. So, any questions on the playground discussion? I'm going to mention a whole bunch of other things, and forgive me, we're probably longer than we usually are, but there's a lot of things beyond maybe the normal activities that are going on. Around Christmas time we talk all about fun stuff, and this is fun too, but it's different. For example, we actually, Joan and I today attended a meeting of the Birth to 3 steering committee. Birth to 3 is a community-wide organization, and we were happy to have our monthly meeting. We were happy to meet a new director, but for me, involving school, it's really a reminder that so much of our student achievement relies on the experiences that children have in those early years, and the collaboration that we can have with community groups in order to improve the lives of kids, I find to be one of the more hopeful efforts that are out there. So Joan's on that committee, I'm on that committee, and I know that there's a lot of attempts to do just that, to find ways to help kids and families, from birth, really address some needs that will, hopefully pay off later on, that we'll see in school. Other things, we have something new and exciting going on. Last week of January, first week in February, we have a group of Chinese students, middle school age Chinese students, who are going to be spending some time living at on the North Country School campus in a separate house. They've got a new house that's equipped for housing a large number of students called the Eileen Rockefeller House. But their school is not, they're not always, sorry, back up. What they're attempting to do is bring in international students for anywhere from short-term to long-term, but then have them immersed in, kind of a regular American experiences. And so, one of those ideas, and we did kick this around a couple of years ago, it sort of came quickly. One of those ideas was to have this group of Chinese students come for a couple of weeks and to spend some time in our school. So we expect to see a group of 10, 15 or so Chinese students, aged 12, 13, 14, joining in with our school. And I see that as a very good thing. We've talked at the board level about how international experiences can improve the experiences for our kids and raise awareness of diversity. And I think this is a real promising thing. So keep your eyes open for a whole group of international kids coming our way. We're also in the thick of future planning meetings, so we've talked about that. Those future plans contribute to our budget, but they also contribute, I think, to the vibrant nature of our school community. So we continue to work on that, and those plans will be coming out in the following months. Other things that are going on. This is the time of year when we introduce some students to a couple of real important programs. One of them is the Adirondack Ed Center that Connie was just sharing with us. This is the month and next month when our sophomores are introduced to those programs. Teachers come here, they talk about the different opportunities. Students then go there and they visit the school and they learn what's going on the ground there. So this is a good time of year for those sophomores to learn about the opportunities at the Ed Center. We also expect to have our high school students, especially our early high school students, introduced to the Upward Bound program. If you're not familiar with the Upward Bound program, right, that's the program that we welcome here, Saturday at Plattsburgh State, which works very hard to support students who qualify in their efforts to go to college and then actually graduate from college. And it's a tremendous effort. It's focused on kids who might not be successful otherwise, but who are seriously interested, and their families are interested in providing that kind of support. So Upward Bound, if you know anybody in those early years of high school, 8th, 9th grade right now, Upward Bound is an outstanding opportunity. We of course have our usual series of games going on. They're filling our afternoon schedules. They're filling our parking lot, as you may have discovered coming in. So there's a lot of things to come out and cheer for. We do have Regents exams next week. Right, this is the mid-year Regents exam, so it's not a tremendous number of students. It's usually select groups of students. We will be administering those exams very soon. We have a new event this year called the Math and Movement Family Fun Night. This is an elementary school event. This is organized by our 5th grade math teacher, Jessica Kelly. And this is kind of an exciting thing. It's a different approach to math instruction. It's instead of math on paper and calculation, it's math through activity, and it involves a lot of it's a lot of maths and movement, with numbers, and a lot of calculation and conceptualization by actually moving around, and it should be a good experience.
Is that for 5th grader?
No, it is not for 5th grade. It's for the whole elementary
that?
school. Yeah. So that is next Thursday. So Math and Movement Family Fun Night. Right, so it's not just for kids. Then for the board, next Friday is the legislative breakfast, right? So we've got the state budget with all of its additional pieces thrown in there, and pet projects, and great ideas coming out of wherever and from whomever. This is a chance for board members, if you're interested, to interact with our representatives about these kinds of things. We expect Betty Little, Dan Steck, and Billy Jones to be there, right? So if you're interested, please let Karen know. There's information on the board about that.
What else? We've got Science Olympiad coming up. So we've got the regional competition for Science Olympiad. That's both middle school and high school are going together for the first time. That's new. And that is Saturday, the 26th. First and second place teams move on to state. So, good luck to our Science Olympiad kids. It's going to be a full bus.
It is, and it's going to be a tough competition because it's really, in our region, it's picked up, the level of competition has picked up a lot.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be interesting.
Where is that?
It's in Plattsburgh this year.
Plattsburgh.
They're hosting.
And what else? We're not going to have another meeting before the Winter Carnival. And so the 76th Winter Carnival, that will open on Thursday, January 31st with the coronation ceremony. I'm sorry, that's the opening ceremony. The coronation ceremony is Saturday night. That's February 2nd. And as you know, board members are invited to attend and sit on the stage with us. So hope you'll consider joining us for that event. Finally, we've got a holiday coming up on Monday, so there is no school for students on Monday for the Martin Luther King holiday. And I think that's everything I've got. Any questions?
So you said the coronation evening is when board members would come typically?
Yes.
And that is that Saturday evening?
You'll get a ladder.
Yes.
Yeah, you'll get a ladder. It's just because our board meeting is right now.
Okay.
And with the legislative breakfast, what time is that on Friday?
It's early.
8 a.m.
8 a.m.
You can put me down for that, Karen.
Yeah, I think I might go as well, Karen. I'm not positive until I check in the office.
And that's at the.
8 to 10:30. This year it's different. It's at the Hotel Saranac.
Hotel Saranac, sure. No more Crown Plaza food for
Too
you.
bad, huh?
They had a conflict. They had another event scheduled.
Oh, it's Karen, I'm going.
You are?
Great. I can skip over that then, information report.
That's it. That's all we had in information report.
That's it, the one item. So linking goals with the agenda items.
For counselors with education?
There was a very specific goal for the curriculum. The words curriculum.
Anybody else? I've got a laundry list here, so.
Students first and foremost with the cafeteria presentation by Sean. It looks like he's really trying to, I think outside the box.
And the community service ad hoc would be, what was the guidance we got, the wellness we got. In Roger's report, the Chinese students would probably fit under first and foremost for diversity. Be nice if we had a board meeting when they were here, they could come in and present. The safety, elementary school is number 4 under leadership. And we'll be hearing 2 ad hoc committee, and those are under number 2 for education. So I think that's, the self-evaluation is under leadership. That's all I got. Anybody has any others? If not, we'll move on to the discussion phase. Number 1 is the Transportation Ad Hoc Committee. Attached to the minutes from the 12/12/18 meeting. Dana Wood organized this ad hoc meeting in response to the board goals. So Dan, myself, joined Jeff Jakes, the Director of Transportation, as well as Dana, and what I found to be a very informative conversation. In fact, I think we came out with more questions than, but it was an interesting conversation. So, would you like to say anything, Dana? Your minutes are there. So.
It was very informative. It was a lot of good information. So.
If there are no questions, the next one is the Community Service Ad Hoc Committee. This is another ad hoc committee in reviewing the district's community service requirements. Roger took the lead in organizing this meeting. It was attended by Patty McCombie, Roger, Teresa Lindsay, and Colleen. Again, the meeting's minutes are attached. Any quick summary, or everything's right there in the minutes?
I think, for me anyway, what stood out to me is just how incredibly involved Patty McConvey is and the tremendous amount of work that she does. So if anyone would like to listen to her for 5 minutes, it is amazing how much work she does. The other thing I took away from it was the discussion about possibly including adults other than the parents to act as mentors for these students. That could open up an opportunity for some of these students who may not have parental involvement to feel like they can be included in the process as well. And then also they're considering maybe breaking it down where there's, I could be wrong in this, where the hours all are not earned at once, that they're possibly spread out over the 4 or 5 years instead of doing it all compact and getting it done by 8th grade, so that they're doing it throughout their high school years. But I don't know, I thought it was wonderful, and I just thought the amount of work and effort that is put into this program is incredible.
No, what, if I can add, sure. It tags into what Connie was saying, you know, because every year there seems to be some seniors that struggle, and what Colleen was just saying is, you know, with Patty McConvey, she keeps a list on in the library of upcoming events, so kids always know. She's routinely checking, you know, as the coordinator, who has what, who needs what, and then we'll say as they come in and track them down. So every year you have the seniors struggling, and it is not because for a lack of multiple adults within the building trying to help them right from 9th grade on to get their hours and not wait until 3 days before graduation to finish up their last 5 hours.
And if you look at the documents that we attach, they really back that up.
Right.
You know, we have a kind of a handwritten summary right now, which becomes really formal later, but you can see, you know, students completing these hours starting in 6th grade. And we even talked about, you know, maybe during the transition period between 5th and 6th, kind of capturing some kids' attention and getting them going even earlier. You know, 40 becomes, you know, it becomes a maximum for the handful, the few, right? But it really becomes almost a starting point for many other kids. You know, it just goes
I think
so far beyond.
those kids that probably hit their 40 before high school don't stop. You know, they continue in high school. That they weren't looking to do it and get it out of the way before 9th grade. They were doing it because they want to do it and get involved. And those are the kids that end up with 200+ hours, you know, in their school career.
Plus the doubling of credit hours or hours earned if an adult or in future a mentor attends with them, so you can double their hours, which is wonderful. So they're being given more than ample opportunity to fulfill this requirement.
It's at Winter Carnival, I believe, where they point out those that are outstanding in their service commitment. I believe that's what it is, isn't it? There's some, it's shocking. How many hours some of these students
every year.
But it's wonderful. What a way to start off.
Well, they do that in the spring too, when they do the middle school breakfast and the awards. Yes.
I know for our half marathon, which we team up with CYC, Patty's one of the premier individuals who gathers about 60 students together on a Saturday morning for a race. So she helps us out a lot. Anything else on the community service? Okay, board self-evaluation. In the executive content is the survey, self-evaluation. I want to thank everyone for completing that. There are 2 surveys. One's in a Word document, the other's in an Excel. And I did not send Karen my version, but I have another Excel version. Just because I like Excel, I guess. But what I did was I took the liberty of scoring this. I took and just took the strongly agrees and assigned them a number. I took the agrees, assigned them a number. The disagrees, a negative number, along with the strongly disagrees, a negative number. No answers fell out of the end, so they didn't count. I then computed the percentages, and I just randomly picked 50%. And if so, a question fell at or below 50%, felt like we should address it. And if I may, I'll just go over the 7 items that were on there, and then we can briefly discuss what we'd like to do with them. But the board periodically discusses where the district should be headed 3 or more years into the future. I had a 43%. The board is actively involved in both local and state levels in advocating for education legislation. Had a very low N, only 3, because 4 did not answer the question. So that was a 33%. I think the legislative breakfast that's upcoming, as well as the Advocacy Day in Albany, which I believe NISBA has put out a flyer for, afford us the opportunity to become involved. Board meetings include at least as much dialogue among board members as there is with administration. That was at 50%. So I'll be monitoring word flow. I don't think that's, I like our board meetings the way they operate now. It's certainly. The next one is just if the board thinks that an important group of constituents is likely to disagree with an action to be considered, the board will make sure to learn how they feel before making a decision. That was 50%. Board routinely informed about best practices in curriculum and instruction by administration and teachers. That was at 50% as well. So. And then lastly, the board maintains an effective policy that ensures all teachers are evaluated regularly. And when I say 50%, 6 out of the 7 people answered that agreed, but it still didn't score enough to break the 50%. So, any of those strike home that you'd like to discuss, or would you like me to put this out there?
Yeah, would you put it out there?
Sure.
I'd like to just look at the.
Yep.
Because I mean, some of them, like the legislative one, I know some have been involved, I mean, some have been here longer. You know, we've gone to these legislative practice. I mean, at the NISBA conference, you're interacting with the Department of Ed people. And although they're presenting, they're not actually in dialogue. In some cases, you can do that. So I think it's just a matter of. I'd like to just see how you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Liam even got his picture in the paper for interacting. And then in the open-ended, there is some bullets there that you can see. I'm not going to read through these, so I don't think anything really struck home that was negative.
The one I did want to address was the new member, elector appointed. And I don't know if you mentioned that one, but that is one that I completely agree with. I don't think we do that.
Mentoring?
When I first joined the board, I had filled a position that was vacant, and John Hopkins had actually met with me. And kind of, just said, look, here's kind of things you should know going into this, because you haven't had no training and no experience doing this, and it was really helpful. And I think that might be a good thing that we could do going forward. I don't know how, new members, what do you think as far as that?
I mean, a lot of them don't go to the training
It might be
until
6 months.
November.
Right, it could be a long time.
So that's quite a few.
And I'm not sure if it's a policy, but we do assign mentors, but I'm not sure. Did you get assigned a mentor?
No,
Mary?
Mary, yeah, well, Mary basically was, I don't know if she was assigned her, but we spoke, we had discussions before I ran.
Okay.
When I was the first, I think maybe when I was getting my login, and then there was some follow-up afterwards, which I really appreciated.
Colleen, did you?
I was reading something, Jeff, when you were speaking. Are you asking in regard to mentorship? Or,
Yeah, I did, because I don't think we do that, and I don't get the sense that we do. And like I said, in my case, John Hopkinson just took it upon himself to do that.
John did that with everyone.
And it was helpful.
It was.
Mary was helpful with me, and I know prior to me making a decision to run, I watched, I think, 6 months worth of board meetings,
Oh my God.
just to kind of get the flow and understand. I did.
God
That
bless
was
you.
just-
Still, Randy.
No, but I really felt like I needed to see what was going on in the process before
Yeah.
I made a decision to run.
Sure.
But I did mention this after we went to that training in November, that I feel when we were voted in and started July 1, I think that training should have been much earlier than that.
Well, they offer it downstate
Okay.
earlier, yeah.
Okay. But,
Yeah, and I thought I shared that information that
no,
you
it's,
were
it's-
interested.
It's fine.
But
It's fine.
it's 2 days, it's, you
It
know,
was very convenient having it in my class,
Yes.
so. it was-
in November.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Joni, you have any input? No? So I think
This is
just,
the first rodeo anyway.
as we approach a new, I guess the voting season, is looking over the orientation process and the mentoring process. I know that there were mentoring processes, but I think they were so informal that it relied upon the new board member to approach the mentor rather than vice versa, just meeting it.
You know, part of the NISBA training is, a lot of it's just like short videos, you know, what you can and can't do as a new board member, for instance. You know, you can't be, you know, stalking around the school and, you know, trying to improve things. Things like that, that aren't intuitively obvious, but, you know, that maybe we could, you know, get NISBA involved early on, and you know, when the new members comes on board, to maybe just start the ball rolling in that direction.
Don't you, after you've been elected in July, or when you start your thing, don't you get some sort of a new board member packet in the mail? See, I don't see a lot of what you guys get. I don't have any idea what they send you.
I don't recall that. I mean, I got appointed, so mine kind of fell in the fall. So I was almost like within a couple of weeks of getting on the board, I went to training, which was great.
Right.
So, but I think what Colleen's saying is you got, like a 5-month or 6-month almost, time period where, well, you have access to it, but it's not convenient.
Right.
But there might be something we could do as a board that would, provide some level of introduction.
Even if it was just very basic.
Yeah, something like that.
Because I definitely learned a couple of things in that training.
Sure, there's some
Probably
kind of
should have
things
done
like
that.
just, like the Alice training type.
Do you
of
mean
thing.
more so than when Mary and I sat with you when you came in and we gave you the information? Remember we sat down and we went
Yeah, no,
through stuff?
which was great. I think that was great. But there were a few other things that surfaced during the training that more protocols, that kind of thing, that I think were helpful. But you and Mary were both very, very good.
Things like talking to the media, how you communicate as a board,
Yeah.
and what vehicles you use to do that, and what the potential ramifications are, like using your personal email versus the school email, that kind of stuff. You wouldn't know unless we went to training class and you were told that. The legal
Right,
aspects.
which is why we have a school email for everybody now
Sure.
and not your own personal emails.
So,
So I'll look into it with Lisbon and see
yeah,
if they have sort of a guideline for orientation.
And also in maybe some of the newer people, like what they felt that would be helpful for them to have learned,
Sure.
would be.
Not that you can probably control this, but I do think anybody that is considering running for a position should come and spend a couple of times at a board meeting and sit here in the audience and just see what it's about before you volunteer your time. And not that you can probably make that a criterion, but it seems
Well, I
like
think there's some information that just came out from NISBA about information on running for school board. That's
Okay.
what it is. Because how many seats are up this year? Right? Two. You and
Three.
My seat's up.
My seat's up.
Now I got one more.
Just you.
Yeah, just the two of us. All right, well, I added that to the new agenda topic, so we'll elaborate a bit more on that. Thank you. Minutes, that's on the consent agenda, so we'll move right on there. Personal items, teaching staff tenure. It's an action item. Upon the recommendation of the superintendent, Keith Fenton is hereby granted tenure in the area of special education on January 15th, 2019. Mr. Fenton holds a permanent certification in special education. Do I have a motion to approve?
Yes.
Jeff, we'll go with you. Colleen second, is that okay? A tie. So. Any conversation on this, or Roger, would you like to add any?
I would just say that our school's a better place because Mr. Fenton's been here, for 3 years. We had a kind of a tough hiring time frame for this one. We hired in the middle of the year. And, Mr. Fenton was a veteran teacher who didn't really need to leave his last position where he was tenured and experienced and, appreciated. But he was our top candidate. He did come here. And his contributions in a variety of ways. He's an artist. If you go there, you'll see a mural on the wall that he's painting with students. He loves to build and construct things and include kids in that. He's been involved in some club work there. And then this big effort he's put into the PBIS program, helping to improve that, really the positive experiences of kids in school has been just a real breath of fresh air. He's a technology wizard, or at least amongst the faculty, they turn to him as a real expert colleague. And then on top of that, you go and watch him teach, and he's terrific, which is, of course, the main part of his job. So he's been a wonderful addition.
And the two that we're addressing have both been tenured in the past, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So, okay, everybody vote. 6-4-0 against, the motion passes. Thank you. The next tenure recommendation, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, Ann Ruggles Miller is hereby granted tenure in the area of elementary education on January 15, 2019. Ms. Ruggles Miller holds permanent certification in nursery, kindergarten, and grades 1 through 6. I have a motion to accept this tenure. Yes. Thank you, David. Thank you, Liam. Any discussion?
So, this is just a procedural one, right? She already had tenure with us, but she switched positions, is that what?
Yes, that's correct.
Got it. Yep.
Any other questions, comments? 6-4-0 against, the motion passes. Special education, moving right along to others. Special education, that's under the consent agenda. Any discussion regarding the February 5th packet on special education? Okay. We'll move into the adjournment phase. Next meetings, dates, locations. February 5th is a budget work session. That's from 6 to 7, correct?
Yeah, 6 to 9.
I didn't know if we wanted to
Get it all done at once.
overlap.
Wow.
Buffet
will-
dinner, sir.
Yeah.
I will also mention that we haven't done our agenda setting meeting, but I think we're going to have the executive session first at 5:45.
Wow. Buffet dinner, yes.
Yeah.
It's a bad use of that.
Okay.
That's on February 5th?
Yes.
Okay. And then 19th is a regular board meeting, 26th is just the budget work session, if needed. February 5th is a board meeting, and then the 19th. Thank you for taking those out that far.
Yeah, it's helpful
Nice
to
for
be able to,
planning.
as you're trying to plan.
Old agenda items, there's quite a few there that have been crossed off. I believe the only one that I've put down is the school counselor home visits. Ken, may I get, I guess, an elaboration of that, of
You mean what the question is?
a question or some history, perhaps, just briefly? Did we used to do that? Or do districts do
You know,
that?
we don't have a standard practice of making home visits from the school counselors. We don't have a social work position in which that's the main part of their job. That's not to say that we don't have school counselors who will make home visits. I'm very familiar with Jen DeLolio, who was here earlier, going out and making a visit recently. Also, our prevention team, Tina Clark is a counselor on the prevention team. While most of her work is done here, she probably does more home visits than anybody, especially when she's meeting with a student and their family as a way to introduce some kind of prevention or treatment program that they're involved in. So I can't quite remember when the issue came up, but I think it may have been raised in terms of certainly some flags that are out there right now, and we're of course hearing it too. There is an interest in having somebody who can on a regular basis access children or students and their families in the community on a more regular basis, and we're hearing that from our faculty as well. So I think that's where that came from. Actually, I think you raised it later,
Yes.
didn't you? Yeah, you raised
But
it.
you said at the same, it was synergy, because at the same time you said someone had raised that with you the same day.
Yes, that's right. Right, because we are and continue to be involved in these future planning meetings in which people are asked to raise the big important issues that are coming up, and that's one.
Thank you.
In healthcare, that's the number one,
Yeah.
is counseling, home visits, social work. So, do we need to add that to any?
No,
No?
I
Okay.
don't think so.
Don't be surprised if you see it come up in a future budget planning
Yeah.
meeting. Because it's, again, one of those issues that.
What would you think of like a coordinator for all the, or would you see as a part-time position or just money for?
That's a good question. Yeah, we've been talking about that also, and trying to figure out how we might be able to gain some of that ability, ranging from accessing existing services,
Sure.
or collaborating with existing agencies, all the way to hiring our own person full time.
Do we have a budget?
We will.
Do we have a grant writer or a grant researcher?
We have a community member who writes grants for us.
Okay. It seems like there are grants out there for social work home visits. Okay, thank you. New agenda topics, as I said, I'd like to put new board member orientation under there, of which I'll take under my wing and find out what's out there. Anything else for new agenda topics?
Maybe. So, being part of Science and Olympiad, I spent a lot of time on bus trips with both high school and soon middle school. And one topic of discussion that's very consistent, also even in the labs, is the current phone policy. And right now all I want to do is just ask the question, when did we, the Board of Education, approve the current policy? Does anybody remember?
Well, there's the policy and then there's the procedure, right? So the policy the board approved a number of years ago.
So that hasn't changed, it's just the procedure.
Right, it's the procedure.
That's what I thought. Because the pushback is, well, that the Board of Education made that decision, and I'm thinking like, I don't recall actually making that change. I know it was done, at the administration level. So I don't want to broach that subject with kids at this point, but I do think it sounds like it needs a review. I don't know if it's a board level issue or it's it's really up to the people who run the school to make that call.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about how to sort of discuss that issue without necessarily having an agenda in place.
Yeah.
Because there are pieces of that that have come into play over the last few years that, sometimes are forgotten, but why they contributed to that. And to make sure that when we're visiting or revisiting that issue, that we're remembering some of the rationale behind what we're doing.
Yeah, I think a lot of what I'm seeing, and this is a specific group of kids, but they're feeling like they've lost something that they once had, maybe took for granted. I don't know. And there may be reasons for it, but they're asking me, and I'm like, I can't answer that, nor will I, because as we said, it's not really a board level. I mean, as a parent, I can have an opinion, but as a board member, I think it's really an administrative decision. But I think the question that was asked me by multiple kids was, well, we ask about it, and they keep saying, oh, we can't do anything about it. The board made that call. So they don't really want the blame or the ball be hitting our court. It's convenient, I understand. But you haven't got to sit, 9-10 hours over a weekend on a bus and be, bombarded with this question. And that's just one, many, but that one came up on this, last trip, and I was like, I don't recall making it. I didn't say that, but I didn't. We didn't.
That was one of the many policies that are policies, as Roger said, then it's at the discretion of the administration to do the procedure. So. Right.
But I don't know.
Unless it becomes what's the procedure?
First I heard of it, it just seems like all of a sudden it's kind of risen, bubbled to the surface.
Right, because there were some changes made between last year. So.
Yeah, right.
That's right.
And I've had a few.
Yeah.
As well.
One thing to point out, because obviously I sat over there in terms of changing the handbook, is even since that change has been made, there have been multiple studies that have come out. You talk about the social and economic welfare and the mental health of students, that there are more and more studies saying that the increased use of devices in schools are leading to an increase of bullying and harassment and depression among students. So if you go beyond just us, there is this pushback from schools to go switch back, and take away some of that freedom that they have had in classes for the very reason that's being out there in terms of the increase of depression and anxiety.
Yeah, we're really focused on those issues.
Right.
This spring.
So, I mean, looking at it as to why, and this was really communicated with the kids the first few days as to the why, we sat and we watched last year as a school up here this whole documentary called Angst. And it really was this documentary about the rise of anxiety among kids connected to devices.
Yeah, I guess it kind of transitions into, as part of our teaching tools, that also we're using a tremendous number. We're using more devices as teaching tools as well.
And at this point, we have as many devices in the building that we have as students.
Right.
So in terms of a one-to-one, if you look at it, we have, and I was talking to Tom Dowd just the other day, we have over 300 laptops, Chromebooks within that's just building here. With our smart school money that's coming, that's going to be 140 more Chromebooks that we can purchase here. So again, that was one of the, the rationale was we're at a point, students don't need to access their phones any longer for educational purposes. We have provided them the devices to do so. So you take away that, I guess, the desire to check your social media sites, and you take away that issue because the devices they have are connected to our Wi-Fi.
Right, which is restricting that.
Right, yeah.
No, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm bringing it up because it's being brought up.
For sure. I appreciate it. Anything else? All right. Adjournment of the meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, sure.
A
second on this. Second.
No one wanted to jump on that.
Happens every meeting.
All in favor?
Don't want to be seen as the anxious one.
6-0. We are adjourned. Oh,
Do we
sorry.
talk agenda setting?
No, I just did it.
Patty Gallagher.
Enjoy your trip
She'd
downhill.
be like, yes, up.
About the skis.
Before you voted.
We want to, is
Yeah.
anybody coming up soon?
Yeah.
All right. And we'll be good for everybody.
It doesn't, it really kicks out to me.
Where's the real busy one right now?
I was wondering
If
about
you're
it.
the real busy
It's
one right
like
now,
$100
when do you and Dan think you can do
So I have one of those
it?
little wood stoves that I got from
I'm-
LPCSD,
Yeah.
and
Fine,
we take it with us. like,
we're
when we go
up
out
and
to
running
work,
now.
Like in October when we go.
23rd won't work, but we'll have it by then. Before then.
Is it a metal, or?
You guys want to meet in the morning?
It's like metal.
One of the upcoming mornings?
Okay.
Which doesn't.
Bye, everyone.
But that's not what's,
Good
it's
night.
not
Thank you.
it's not
That works
working
best for
for
you.
you anyway. so,
Right.
That's
I
plus.
mean, it could be this Thursday,
Yeah.
this Friday,
I'm quite surprised it was
could be this
I got a
Tuesday, coming Tuesday.
$3,000 gas wood stove and it doesn't put that much out.
Excuse me.
Whatever.
This year.
What time works for you?
Against the wall.
Oh my God, yeah, this thing has no insulation.
Thursday, Friday?
Thursday, Friday, or Tuesday work fine for me.
100 degrees.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Colleen.
Good night. Bye.
Good night.
17th, I'm good.
8:30?
18th, I'm, actually Friday's
Is
better.
8:30 too late?
No. Not for me, how about you?
8:30 is fine.
On Thursday or Friday?
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, thank you. Do we decide on Thursday? Or Friday?
Oh, winter clothes.
What's that?
I was putting in for Thursday.
I am too.
I guess that's it. Oh, boy.
Wow, it's a long one.
What?
It's a long one. It's 8:10.
That's because of the budget for the first half hour.
That's right.
All right.
Our next one will be long also.
Well, it,
Yeah, executive session,
Right.
budget.
executive session for sure.
So the executive session is Sonia Franklin's tenure, and her salary calculates